Welcome to 10-Minute Type Advice by Personality Hacker. I'm Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
This show features questions from the Personality Hacker community that we answer in about 10 minutes. We've been using personality types in our coaching for years, and we'd love to answer your questions about personal growth through the lens of type. You can find out more about us at personalityhacker.com. Okay, now let's hear today's question.
Hi, Antonia and Joel. My name is Annie, and I am an INTJ. Supposedly, this is the rarest personality type in women. Whether this is true or not, I do notice that I am quite different from most women I encounter. I wanted to hear your take on this topic. Are INTJ women as rare as they say? How does our personality type show up differently from male INTJs? And because INTJ women often do not show up as what society considers traditionally feminine, how do our personality types affect romantic relationships and friendships? I love your podcast, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Annie, for the question. The challenges of being an INTJ and a woman, I think, are real. I think that there are a lot of social expectations, gender expectations, cultural expectations that we have in all of human history. It doesn't really matter what culture or society you're a part of. There's certain expectations. And I would say in Western culture, the culture I live in, I think that there are certain expectations of women, and I think there's certain expectations of thinkers. And I think you've got two sides that are expected of you as an INTJ female. I think the other key here too is that it's not just INTJ women. I think all thinker women have some challenge in this world, because they're in the minority a lot. There's not a lot of you. And I think that there's unique things that thinker women deal with that I certainly don't have as much experience with, because I'm not a thinker or a woman. But Antonia, you are both. So I think you could probably speak a lot to this.
Yeah, the struggle is real, is how they say it, I think. And to answer your specific questions, first, it is incredibly rare to be a woman and have INTJ preferences. I think demographic breakdowns, if I remember correctly, it's anywhere between 0.8% up to 2.2% of women have INTJ preferences. And the only type that is more rare when you use gender as a demographic breakdown are ENTJ women. So women with ENTJ preferences is like slightly less, but not by much. I mean, we're talking like 0.6 up to 2.1.
By the way, these stats don't make any sense to me, because in our world, Antonia, we're surrounded by nothing but INTJs, both men and women,
yeah.
And ENTJs. So this is out in the world, right? Not in the type circles that we tend to flow in.
Yeah, this is going to be out in the wild. You're not going to run into very many INTJ women. So yeah, it is rare. It's not the most rare, but it's might as well be, right? And the other most rare is your ENTJ sisters. So you've basically got that on lock. And there are good and bad things that come with that. First, there is what I call the bird of paradise element, which is that you're not for everybody, but for the people you are for, well, they've had a devil of a time finding you because you're not anywhere. So that bird of paradise piece, I think, is important to remember. And when we produced our Unstoppable program. So Unstoppable is a program designed specifically for women who have intuitive thinker preferences. There were a lot of women who were, well, first of all, they were surrounded by other women that were like them. So it was like a very cathartic experience. It was rare and wonderful. But there was a lot of women who failed to understand how special that really is. Sometimes we end up negating this idea of being special simply because you're rare, right? It's like, oh, well, I'm rare, so therefore I must be special. And that sounds very pandering and patronizing. But the truth is that there's a lot of amazing stuff that happens in the alchemical response between these two seemingly disparate elements, which is being a woman and being an NT, and in your case, particularly an INTJ. There are some major advantages that come from having this unique lived experience. And so I just want to throw that out before I talk about the other stuff, because I want to make sure that I set the tone that it is rare, it is challenging, but it's also something that's pretty cool too. So how are INTJ women different than INTJ men? Well, I would say that you have different social expectations, like Joel mentioned. There's going to be a lot of pressure put on you to look differently than you are. INTJ men, while there are still pressures that are put on all types in all situations, there's going to be more of a sense that that makes sense. An INTJ man, that makes sense somehow, that feels a little bit more like it isn't outside of what we anticipate. There's a quiet steadiness there. There's a thoughtfulness there. There's a desire to build something in the outside world. And all of those things feel very much like, well, that's how men are supposed to be, right?
And all the things that they're not showing up with, they're given a pass for. Maybe not the nurturing aspects, the cuddle with little kids, things of this nature. No, I'm not saying INTJs can't cuddle with little kids. The things that might be expected of somebody in a nurturing role. Well, he's an INTJ. I mean, what do you expect? Is kind of what people would say.
Yeah. That I would argue that INTJs are very frequently cuddly, but they're not people who usually want to spend an absurd amount of time just nurturing children, like you mentioned, Joel. Whereas there's going to be an expectation of all women to show up with feeling qualities, and I would argue especially with extroverted feeling qualities. So extroverted feeling or harmony is a cognitive function that is the preferred function of all feeler judgers, or FJs. And the majority of women, demographically speaking, the majority of women have FJ preferences. They use extroverted feeling or harmony. And there's a lot of arguments that could be made about how that is probably an evolutionary advantage, and there's all sorts of things that go along with that. But it has ended up becoming I would say sort of our archetype for femininity is extroverted feeling. And especially how a woman is supposed to find her place in society, where the kinds of things that she's supposed to be interested in and the kinds of things that she's supposed to be doing. Where, there's, of course, a lot of range that falls in there. It's not that a person who has extroverted feeling or harmony preferences is always going to be doing the same thing as everybody else who has the same preferences, but there is going to be a focus. There's going to be sort of a predictable pattern of the kinds of things that they're interested in. Whereas you as an INTJ extroverted feeling or harmony falls way down what's called your cognitive function stack. You don't get to it until your 7th function. And unfortunately, the 7th and 8th functions for all of us are usually very annoying. They're annoying when people expect us to show up that way. They're annoying when we can't get around them. So on some level, you'll be expected to use a function and use it all the time, and maybe even be trained into using it, that you personally find annoying. So that's a very unique challenge that INTJ women experience, that they're just trying to navigate this world that keeps projecting onto them something that you neither identify with nor would want to have if you could. So that's a very unique expression, and that's going to show up in all sorts of ways. Oftentimes, it means that you're going to be less one-sided. One challenge that INTJ men fall into is that this is the expectation for them, and so one-sidedness is more of a challenge. One-sidedness meaning being too much in your preferred functions and not integrating your other functions as much. That is far more common for men. For women, it's not as common. It does happen. It does happen for sure, but what's nice is that you're less likely to fall into one-sidedness because you'll have had to sort of stretch out of your comfort zone more in order to understand other people's expectations of you and to be able to meet other people where they're at. So that's a major advantage. How does it affect, romantic relationships and careers? Well, in the past, it affected careers in kind of a negative way, meaning that you probably had a lot more, or INTJ women had a lot more in them, a lot more potential than they were frequently able to express. But right now, it seems to be a pretty good time. You've got INTJ preferences as a woman. There's all sorts of doors opening up. And especially if you're in different industries that appeal to INTJs, like the STEM, anything in STEM, anything that really allows you to flourish in leadership, all of these things are becoming more and more available to women. So I would say it's a pretty good time right now in career. Now, in romantic relationships, in love, it's always going to be a struggle. But I want to go back to that first thing I said, which is that you're a bird of paradise. You're not going to be for everyone. One challenge is that because INTJ women tend to be quiet and INJs in general are good at camouflaging themselves so they don't get too much pressure or they don't get too much attention on themselves. There might be a challenge in people really truly knowing you or you feeling known to others. So it's going to require you not allowing that invulnerability fixation that we talk about in the Personality Hacker book and in our starter kits. There's that invulnerability fixation that IJs tend to have, which will allow you to stay in hiding a little longer than you should. And you might have to get over that fear of vulnerability and become more transparent to really communicate who you are and not allow other people's images of you be projected onto you. If you can do that, if you can be brave enough to showcase who you truly are and what you're truly about, it will unfortunately shrink the pool of potential suitors because not everybody is into that. But those who are, they've been looking for you their entire lives, and that's something that's really important to remember. So, I think it's a unique situation, and it's also one that comes with a lot of opportunity as long as you see it for what it really is. It's not going to be a bed of roses, but it's also not a curse. It's a feature, not a bug.
Thank you, Annie, for the question. We really appreciate it. You can ask your own question about personality types or personal growth. Visit personalityhacker.com/questions. We also have programs designed to help you with your personal growth through the lens of personality types. Again, visit personalityhacker.com and find the program that's made just for you. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
Thank you for listening to 10-Minute Type Advice by Personality Hacker. We'll talk with you on the next episode. If you're focused on personal growth, I think you'll resonate with our core content over at personalityhacker.com. We want to see you understand how your mind is wired so you can generate motivation, improve social skills, find career opportunities, and master excellent decision making. But a quick warning, we are advice and action focused in all of our articles, podcasts, and videos. This means that we attract people who like to be challenged to become excellent, to take action, to put in the work to optimize themselves, not simply just gather more information. If you are committed to personal growth and ready to radically find your inner truth, then come over and be a part of our growing community of like minds at Personality Hacker.